Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Terese Pratt. I'm the director of the Transfer Center here on the University of Utah campus. And as you can see, our motto is that we provide a bridge from other schools to the University of Utah. And I'm going to talk a lot about transfer students, transfer advising, articulation, what the Transfer Center does, how we can team up with you, and I'll answer any transfer questions that you have. So first, let's start talking about the center. One of the main services that we provide is to bring out advising to potential transfer students at our community college campuses. I think this is the most valuable thing that we do. By far, the most important transfer partner for the University of Utah is Salt Lake Community College. And so as new advisors, if you want to get to know one school that will be the most helpful for you in working with transfer students, it will be Salt Lake Community College. I think in a given year, at least 40% of our total transfers are from Salt Lake Community College. So that makes it a little easier when you're trying to learn all the ins and outs and requirements and things like that. They're our natural partner, and they are great to partner with. So we go to Salt Lake Community College. In fact, I am just freshly back from there. I just raced in my car here. We go there twice a week to the main Redwood campus. We go twice a month to the South City campus and once a month to the Jordan campus. And we are out there doing initial advising, and it's really sit down and talk to students. What should you take to transfer to the university? What are their requirements? We help them pick majors. We help them understand the process. So our goal is to make their time at community college look like it should look if they want to transfer and effectively move through a bachelor's degree in a reasonable amount of time. So Salt Lake Community College, main partner there. Snow College is really the only other total community college, sole community college in the state anymore. We used to have many community colleges, and they all kind of grew and took on new roles, provided four-year degrees. And once they had four-year degrees, they were less interested in transfer advisors coming to their school, even though we still get a lot of transfer students from other places. But Snow College is still a two-year school, and so is Salt Lake Community College, so we're there often. Excellent transfer students from Snow College. One of the great things that we do, I think, is bring departmental advisors and representatives from different agencies with us when we go to the community college, and they are there to provide advising for their program. So I just left 2 mechanical engineering advisors at the community college, and they probably had 10 people waiting to talk to them. So Salt Lake Community will advertise that a department is going to be there. They will collect students that are interested in that major, or Equity and Diversity does different events. So we like to team up because we're such a regular presence on their campus and we're there all the time. Students know to come and find us, know where we are. It's great for departments to come. We've got the students coming to us, so we're a natural place to come. And we work with the Transfer Center at the community college to provide advertising for visits. So if you're interested in letting community college students know about your program, either to maybe let them know more about a program they might not know as much about, or to give more information about programs we know they're interested in, you're welcome to join us. I plan visits. It's a few months before the semester. I set out a calendar, and we have table space, and you can just take a space at the table. So if you're interested, you can let me know. We are also more than happy to take out materials. We give out a lot of materials to students. And so if you can't come out but you'd like to send us materials, it's great if you can create them so they address specifically Salt Lake Community College or Snow College transfer students. Here are the classes that transfer, that sort of thing. But it might just be general information about your program or your major or your services. That's fine too. We're also an initial advising home for transfer students when they first come to the University of Utah. So this is a large, intimidating school for a lot of our transfer students, particularly if they're coming from the community college, I think. So to have a place that's called Transfer Center, they can say, I have questions, I don't know where to go. Transfer Center, I'm going to go there. So that's kind of our goal, is to say, yes, we're a good first stop for you. And that is really, we mostly do advising at the beginning of their time here. We're the ones who answer general education and bachelor's degree questions. We're the only office on campus that can take a transfer class from another school and make a substitution in the DARS report for a bachelor's degree requirement. But we're also the ones that do general education. Even though admissions does take a look at them and tries to give them general education codes, they miss them sometimes. They can come to us and we'll go, yeah, that just got missed. Let's put that in your DARS report. We help students with major exploration, minor exploration, just helping them figure out what they want to do here. Provide advising on policies and procedures, and then if we don't know the answer, we are more than happy to figure out where a student should go and find the right resource for them. Most of the time, they come with a lot of their general education done. They're not doing a lot of gen ed, so they meet with us a few times at the beginning, but most of them are ready to go out and be part of their major. And so I would say the most important advisors for a student once they get on this campus are departmental advisors. And so we really feel like we're a team. And we kind of do that beginning advising, and then they're off to the departments for a lot of the rest of their advising time. We do a lot of things on campus that are related to transfer. So it's kind of like if it's transfer, people on campus usually call the transfer center, mostly me. So we try to make sure everyone keeps abreast of transfer information. We provide forums for discussing different issues. I put out a newsletter twice a year that goes out to all the USHE schools. And so if you have anything about your major or program, equity and diversity, I put materials all the time. This goes out to advisors in our community colleges throughout the state. So this is a good way to let them know about things. They all read them. They all share them with other advisors on their campus and their students. So you are welcome to submit information for that newsletter. I usually announce when I'm preparing that at the UAC meetings, the University Academic Advising Committee. And you're welcome to send me things for that. We do help a lot with departmental programming. So if there's a special event or an activity for transfer students and you need general transfer information, we come and do events for lots of different kinds of things. So you can ask us to help with those kinds of things. We work with your office a lot to do diverse transfer student programming. And then we're not the people in charge of articulation. So articulation is when we take a look at classes from different schools and decide how they're going to come in and meet requirements, and we sort of match up classes. Articulation is the term for that. We're not the ones in charge of that so much. It's departments and the admissions office, but we are the end users of those materials. So we do participate quite a bit in these things called majors meetings. The Board of Regents requires every state school and all of our private schools participate in these. Every year they get together, and all of the social work people will get together and say, look, we changed this class. Look, we're doing this in gender studies. So that's important. If you have a chance to participate in those in your major, it's really good for advisors to participate, and we try to help out with those so we know what's going on. There's a state transfer articulation committee that we participate in. So we try to keep abreast of things, and when we learn new things that you all need to know, we come to the UAC meetings and try to talk about them. We also try to hold at least once a year something called the Transfer Coordinating Council, and this is just anybody who ever deals with transfer students. We get together, we have a big lunch meeting, and we talk about something that you need to know. So changes to admissions policy or something else that's new. So again, we'll let you know when those go on. Do come. People find they're really, really helpful, and we'll let you know, and we'll feed you lunch. And then we do training and things like that. So we do a lot of things outside of just advising. Let's talk a little bit about our transfer students. Remember, transfer students on our campus are a very large group. It's a little hard to pin down the exact numbers because our institutional analysis mostly looks at fall admission, and we know transfer students come in fall, spring, and summer, but most people agree it's at least 40%, probably closer to 45, 48. I think there have been some years where we've had half of our people on campus are transfer students. So it's a very, very large group. We are a transfer institution. Most of our transfers these days come from the Utah State System of Higher Education. USHE is the term we use. This is very important. You should know what the USHE schools are because things transfer in differently from state system schools and non-state system schools. And in the general education section, and I'm not sure which page, but there is a list of the USHE schools. And you're lucky you live in Utah where there aren't that many state schools because you don't have that many to learn. If you lived in Massachusetts or something, it would be trickier. But there aren't too many. I think it's in the section with general education. And you don't necessarily have to know those. It's just at some point take note of the USHE schools because things transfer differently. As I said, roughly 40% of our total transfers are from Salt Lake community. I think a lot of students come to the U and find this culture here very different from the culture that they've been in. Since most of our transfers are community college, this is a very different place. We approach things differently, the role of the institution is different, and the culture is very different. So it's helpful to think about what that difference is. And that's one great thing that you learn when you come to the community college. You're coming from the community college, so you already know, but if you've never spent time at a community college campus, or particularly Salt Lake Community College, you don't have to be up there very long before you get a very different feel for the place. And I think the role is different, the role of advisors are different. I think there's a little more intrusive advising because I think students need that maybe a little bit more out there. A lot of them find this place intimidating. They're not quite ready to be here. And so they come from there and then they come here and we expect a little bit more autonomy. I don't think that we're not helpful, but I think occasionally students are looking at you like, you're not going to do that for me? Where we would say, let me show you how to do that and then you do it. And I think that's very good. And I always tell my students, you're ready to do this. You've had 2 or 3 years. Come on, but let me help you, but I want you to learn to do this. So I think it's moving them to a more autonomous position than they might have been in, which is great. But we also need to understand their expectations might be a little bit different to start, especially for you as an advisor or a helper. A lot of first-generation students, and that's why we want to be working so carefully and so closely with our community college partners, because this place is not always the best place for a student to start if they haven't got very much background, I would say. I think the community college does an excellent job of transitioning to higher education, providing support services and things like that. So I think it's very valuable for many students to start there. So we want to make sure we keep an open door so that they can move on. But I think you need to be cognizant of the fact that they might not understand the terms and things like that if they're first-generation students. Also, our transfer students tend to be busy. They do tend to be a little bit older, so their lives might have gotten a little more complicated than a traditional 17-year-old freshman. So I have found over time we provided workshops and activities, and it's really hard to get transfer students to find the time to do. I think they would love to, but they don't have time. So you want to be thoughtful if you're working with transfer students about making sure you're considering where they're coming from. They are not going to be as interested in the MUS or a fraternity or a sorority, but they are very interested in internships, clubs or organizations that relate to their major. They're getting close to graduate. They can see graduation and the workforce coming at them, and they're interested in those kinds of things. So consider the timing of your activities. A lot of our transfer students work, so if you're trying to get them to attend things, think about some alternative times outside the traditional times that we do things on campus. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the transfer application process, because I think in your roles, all of you could easily be first contact for a transfer student. And it's not that you're going to be the expert on applying to the U, but it is really helpful if you can give them an idea of what the steps will be. It's pretty simple, really. And if there's any strange configurations or things that are weird that you need to know, but you can always send them to the admissions office. But if you can get them started by saying, here are the basic steps, then at least when they go in to start filling things out, they'll have an idea. So it's really just 3 steps. They fill out an application online, and if you want to take a look at that at some point in time, it doesn't hurt at all to have looked at the PDF of the online application just to see what they're filling out. Pay a fee. Right now it's $45 unless they're international students. And believe me, one of the interesting phenomenons that I'm seeing over and over and over again, international students will come and start at a community college and then transfer here. That's a little more complicated. They pay a little higher fee because they are doing an international application. And then we need transcripts from all their previous schools. And so one of the confusions that a lot of students have is, if I have gone to Weber State and Utah State, and then I finally ended up at Salt Lake Community College, I have sent Weber State and whatever other schools all to Salt Lake Community, they'll send all my transcripts for me. No. Utah State, Weber State, every school you've ever gone to must send a transcript separately. So our transfer students transfer around a lot. So for some of them, I've seen students sending 5 transcripts. I would say get your transcript sent first. Do the 3rd step first and then go back and do the rest. There is something called the National Clearinghouse. Every time a student attends a college or university in this country, it's recorded. Admissions will check that. They can see everywhere a student has gone. So when a student says, I just don't want to send that transcript or this transcript, that is not something they have a choice on. It's like a criminal record or a driving record or something like that. Unfortunately, it's there. It's a historical document, so they do need to send that. We are requiring them to show us 30 credit hours of completed work, so the grades must be posted on 30 credit hours at the time they are applying to be considered a transfer student. So that does not mean that a student with less than 30 hours cannot apply, but they will not go through this simple transfer application process if they have less than 30 hours. They will go through the freshman application process, which is more involved. They will have to send high school grades. We'll look at ACT or SAT scores. We will look at completion of high school requirements, 2 years of a foreign language, so much science. So we go back to high school if they have less than 30 credit hours. The question I get all the time, I had it probably 5 times today. I don't have 30 hours now, but I will at the end of spring semester. The deadlines are such that students do not have time to wait until grades are posted. We expect application before a semester is complete for the next semester, and in fact, the actual deadlines are too late. So for example, the fall semester application deadline is April 1st. I would never urge a student to wait until April 1st to turn in their application for fall. I tell them to do it in February. So these are the optimal times that you see here, and there's a checklist in your binder that shows these optimal times. So it really can be problematic for students who are waiting to complete their 30 credit hours. So that's something where they need to maybe talk to an admissions counselor. They can even come and talk to us and we'll strategize with them. Is it better for you to stay at the community college for another semester? If you want to try to do a late application, that's always possible, but not always ideal. So we want to talk to them about it. So this 30-hour thing really can be difficult when it comes to the application deadlines and not completing them. So having 30 hours that you're going to finish is not the same as having 30 hours that are done right now. We expect 30 hours to be completed at the time they turn in their application. There is a new requirement that students pay an enrollment deposit as soon as they have been accepted. So the minute they get an acceptance notification from the U, and I always tell students to use the tracking link on the admissions website. If you haven't seen it, it's just a little icon. They can click on it and see what's going on with their application. They can see when they're admitted. They'll send them an acceptance letter too, but that's going to take a little longer, so it's good to be tracking it the whole time. As soon as they know they're admitted, they need to go on the computer and set up their UMail and their password and everything, and then they need to pay this enrollment deposit. Right now it's $150. That saves their spot at the university. It goes toward their first semester tuition. Nothing can happen until they've done that. They can't go to orientation. They can't register. Their transfer work does not get posted until they've done that. So that's a very important step that needs to happen right off the bat. They can waive it if it's a problem paying it. They can talk to the admissions office. And students receiving financial aid and things like that, yes, definitely. So they can communicate with admissions. Yeah, they just need to talk to the admissions office and find out about waiving that deposit. Definitely, they'll do that. Okay. Orientation is an absolute mandatory requirement for all of our transfer students. And they will not like this, but really there's no way to figure out what they're doing here. There's an interesting attitude among transfer students, not all of course, but some. I have been there, done this, I know exactly what I'm doing. And believe it's very different from school to school. They do need to go to an orientation and find out how things happen here. So orientation is about registration, ID, parking, kind of the details, the nuts and bolts. And it's about registration, and that is the message that students don't seem to understand. So you'll say, okay, sign up for an orientation, attend an orientation, and they'll say, so when do I register? At orientation. So we need to make sure that we get those two together in their mind, because I'll have a student selecting an orientation date. Let's say they're going in the fall. They will select a date at the end of June. Well, we start holding orientations for fall in April, and all the ongoing students pretty much register in April and May. And so a student who's selecting a June or July orientation is really waiting a long time to register. They don't understand that, so help them understand that this is what it's all about. And I would like to see a student leaving orientation registered for their full schedule if possible, but at least a class or two so they have an understanding of the registration system. We have a chance to get the glitches out if there are problems for them. So as soon as they're admitted, have paid their fee, and set up those computer accounts, they can go onto the orientation website and find a date and come. And the earlier, the better. If you want to check that out so you can see what the process is, I think they put an orientation session in a shopping cart, which gives them the impression they have to pay for orientation, but they do not. It is not. There is no fee. So orientation. usually as departmental advisors participate in orientations in different ways. We advise students in our majors, and so that's something, if you haven't started learning about your role at orientation, that's a really important time for transfer students especially need their departmental advisors at orientation, because they come in with all these different credits and everyone is different. It's pretty hard to do a generic presentation to, depends on how many students you have, I guess, but it's really important for departments to be represented at orientation. Then we have mandatory transfer advising. So I think you've learned about mandatory advising. Transfer students get in on this from the beginning. We do not want them registering without speaking with an advisor. Because we now bring advisors to orientation, technically the advising requirement can be met by going to orientation, but if you're not really sitting down one-on-one with your students at orientation because you're not able to do that, then I always tell students to make an individual appointment, and I think that's much better for transfer students. So we would really like them meeting with you before, after, it doesn't matter, but I like to have them go to orientation, to advising before, and then they can go to orientation and they know exactly what to take. Doesn't matter what order it happens in, but you actually can go into the PeopleSoft accounts and click that you've met with a student and clear them of this mandatory advising requirement. So transfer students particularly need that one-on-one. All right, let's talk a little bit about transferability of credits. And it is kind of a complicated thing with many, many exceptions, unfortunately. Okay, so there are two ways to look at this. So initial questions of transferability, in other words, will we accept a class from this school or that school? That's determined by the admissions office. It's not us, or it's not departmental advisors. We have no say in that. It's complicated, and it has to do with accreditation, and that's a very complicated thing. So if a student comes to you with a school you've never heard of, you don't want to immediately start saying, oh yeah, I'll accept this, I'll accept that. The first question is for the transfer admissions office, do you accept credits from this school? A student can go and ask, or you can give them a call. International credits are very complicated to evaluate, and you will not get a call. Call and just get. You can sometimes call international admissions, and they'll say, yes, that school is a school we accept credits from. But the actual matching up of courses, very complicated for international students. But you want to always first check and see if it's even a school we would accept a credit from. So that's the admissions office. There's another kind of transfer credits that I want to talk a little bit about, and that's concurrent enrollment. Are you familiar with concurrent enrollment classes? Courses that are college courses that are taken in high school. They may go to a community college and take the class. They might have a teacher come into their high school. They might have a regular old high school teacher that teaches it. There are lots of different flavors of concurrent enrollment. It doesn't matter what kind of concurrent enrollment it was. If they receive college credit, and they will receive it at an institution, and they never know what school they got credit from. Where did you get that? My high school. No, you got it from somewhere. They have to contact the institution that gave them credit, and they have to transfer that work just like any other transfer student. And that is something that's confusing for our new, so these are the new freshmen coming in. They're transfer students too. They're freshmen and transfer. So they must have those sent from their transfer institution, and they just need to contact the registrar's office and have those credits sent. And then we will post them on their record and evaluate them just as if they were any other kind of transfer credit. We don't code those students in as transfer students, however, and that is because there are many more scholarship opportunities for freshmen, and they really are still freshmen. They are coming in as, sitting in a high school class and taking college is not quite the same as being a full-on college student. So we, in many ways, they're freshmen, and we want them to have the opportunity to apply for freshman scholarships, and we want them to be part of freshman learning communities and things like that. So they have transfer credit. That's still there, and they're really worried when they hear you're not going to put them in as a transfer student. No, they still get the credit, but we consider them a freshman as far as admission standing goes. Okay. The really complicated question is articulation. Matching classes so you can tell what meets your requirements, what meets general education requirements. And they always say, how does my class transfer? That is, I just have a simple question. Like, have a seat, let's talk. It really is pretty complicated how things transfer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about general education because it's helpful for you to know how things transfer in for gen ed. But if you're a departmental advisor, the bulk of your time will be spent matching classes to your particular requirements for your major. But it is important. Gen ed intersects, interplays. You want to know a little bit about that, I think. So let's talk about what I call package deals. And these are groups of classes that come in certain units and packages that make it a little easier for students to clear requirements. The most common package will be an associate's degree. Many of our transfer students from community colleges and even from some of our four-year institutions, they'll have an associate's degree. So this is a 2-year degree. They're usually configured this way: 60 credit hours, more or less, half of it general education and half of it other kinds of requirements. So sometimes associate's degrees have certain focus areas, almost like a major. We don't usually call them majors because they're not full bachelor's degrees, but you can get an associate's degree in psychology or social work or something like that. So a social work one, it'll have 32 hours of general education and 30 some odd hours of social work kinds of courses. That's a typical configuration. The Associate of Arts and Associate of Science are the two types. An Associate of Arts degree has foreign language study included in it. An Associate of Science has a little math, the same amount of math as far as I can tell. So if we have an AA or an AS degree from a USHE school or LDS Business College, which is a small private college here in Salt Lake, that will come in as a unit, and it will actually clear the general education requirements here at the University of Utah. When you look at general education at Salt Lake Community or Snow or Dixie, it doesn't look the same as our gen ed, exactly, not class by class. But if they've got this degree, we take it as a package, and we just clear it on the DARS report. It will say, cleared by associate's degree. So that's a package where we don't insist on them having exactly the same configuration of our gen ed. There is another type of associate's degree that you need to be aware of, applied associate's degrees or AAS degrees. These are vocational degrees. And when you look at the way they are configured, they are predominantly courses toward a very vocational-oriented program. Paralegal studies, cosmetology, something like that. We accept all the credits, and we encourage students with AAS degrees to go on and continue with their education. But they have not done 32 hours of general education. They've maybe done 1 or 2 or 3 classes. So if they transfer here, they still have to do their general education. All of their cosmetology classes or their paralegal classes or something like that, they still transfer within the USHE system, which is an interesting thing. They can fill elective hours. They can really move them forward in their degree. And so especially if we work carefully with applied associate's degree students and we get them into liberal arts majors, they've got these really hands-on vocational marketable skills from their AAS degree, and then they come up and get those transferable skills like thinking, analyzing problems. That's a great combination. So we have a whole program with Salt Lake Community where we try to encourage students to think about that. But we don't want them thinking they're coming up with all their general education done, because they're not. So they're coming up with a lot of electives and great skills, but they still need to work on getting those gen eds done. So when you talk to a student, it's really, if you start talking about general education, make sure when they say they have an associate's, it's not an applied associate's degree. When we talk about clearing general education, we are not talking about bachelor's degree requirements. So remember, that's a very important distinction here. And when I talk to students, I usually say, okay, general education tend to be lower level requirements. Bachelor's degrees tend to be upper level, and that's why 2-year degrees do not fill them. I mean, our upper division writing, it's upper division. You can't get upper division courses at a community college. International requirement, upper division. Bachelor of Science requirement, upper division. So it's helpful to think of it that way. They are not cleared. So when a student, if you're talking to them about clearing gen ed with an associate's, make sure you make that distinction, because every year we have students who think they're going to graduate and they haven't done a CW, an IR, the 2 QIs, because they hear, my generals are done, I'm done with everything. All I have left is my major. That's not true. They are done with a very big chunk of stuff, but not their bachelor's degree requirements. Out-of-state associate's degrees are a little bit different because they're not all matched up, and the Board of Regents doesn't have, us working together so carefully. So there isn't a hard, fast rule, but for the most part, an out-of-state associate's degree will clear the basic writing requirement, the lower level one, the WR1 and the WR2 requirement, and the intellectual exploration. So that's that combination of fine arts, humanities, science. We usually just see those cleared with an associate's. And then we check to see, do they have enough math? Do they have the right kind of American history? So they could clear the whole thing, but we just don't automatically put an X through it the way we do with an in-state. So any questions about associate's degrees? You won't be advising in depth on this, but this will come up a lot as you talk to students that are transferring. And you can always call or send them to us if you have questions. Another kind of package, and this is one that advisors often don't know as much about, but it's really helpful for you to be aware of it. It's called a letter of completion, or as Salt Lake Community College is now going to call it, a certificate of completion. This is sort of another package deal. This is a document that's sent when a student transfers that tells us not that they have a whole associate's degree, because they don't, but that they completed the gen ed part of an associate's degree. So those 30 hours that are just general ed. They might not have finished the rest of a degree. That's okay. As long as we know their gen ed is done, the Board of Regents says you've got to accept that. So a letter of completion or certificate of completion will do the same thing as that whole associate's degree as far as gen ed goes. Clears the general education requirements. Again, not the bachelor's degree requirements. We send letters of completion out all over the place. So as all the state schools, we accept each other's gen ed. Basically, that's what that means. So we send them, but we only send them to Utah State institutions. I've had students say, can you send this to California? They don't care. They don't have an agreement with us. They're not going to care. But state institutions, Westminster, we do send them there because they accept them too. So a letter of completion is a really good option for a student who might be at Salt Lake Community College, for example, and wanting to major in something where there aren't a lot of gender studies classes that transfer up. So as soon as they have their general education done, that's a good time for them to come. Rather than staying and doing 30 more credit hours, come on up to the university a little bit sooner, but you've got your general education all done. Okay, another misperception is that a student has to have some kind of package to transfer. In some systems within like Florida, California, you do have to have a degree or some kind of certificate to transfer. You don't have to. As long as you have 30 hours, you can transfer. So if they come up without an associate's degree or a letter of completion, we just do class by class match. Oh, that class looks like our art class. We'll clear you of a fine arts. That looks like our American history. So, as I mentioned before, admissions does do an initial review of general education courses when a student transfers them in. They definitely miss things. If it's a slightly unusual title, they won't look at it. They don't have time. They're just doing a really quick evaluation. So if you talk to a student and they have a class and you're looking at it and you're thinking, wow, that looks just like a social science gen ed, or that should be math, have them come to us and we'll sit down and really take a look at it. And we will go in, and if it looks like a class that will count, we'll go in and do a substitution in their DARS report. That would be the transfer center you would send them to for that. And then again, we are the only ones that do bachelor's degree requirements. So admissions, I don't know why, but they do not even look at a student who has an upper level writing class from Dartmouth. They don't look at it. So you might be the only person sitting down and going over a transcript, and the student will go, well, why can't that be a CW? Well, it just never got reviewed. Send them over to us. They can talk to the quick answer desk. We'll take a look at it. If it's more complicated and they need some kind of documentation, course description, syllabus, we'll let them know. Major advisors, you're the ones that do all the evaluation for departmental requirements. So as in the transfer center, I don't have any authority to look at social work classes and say, oh, this can count for this prerequisite, or this can count for a gender studies requirement. Only the departments do that. And you're the only ones who have access to your DARS reports to do substitutions in the major requirements part of a DARS report. Oh, I do need to talk about one exception, because there's always an exception to transfer. Diversity classes from Salt Lake Community College. Diversity is a bachelor's degree requirement, and here at the U, it's almost all in upper division. But Salt Lake Community College, when they initially started requiring diversity classes, came to the U and said, if we send all of our diversity classes to you for approval before we start offering them, will you let our students clear that requirement? And we said, yes, thank goodness. So we do accept all of the diversity classes from Salt Lake Community College, and they actually just automatically get picked up. That's the only time, though. So if you see somebody from anywhere other school and they think, that should count for diversity, they need to come and talk to us. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some advising tools that I think you'll probably want to use working with your transfer students. DARS reports are the best. So if you're not feeling comfortable with DARS yet, you want to get that way, they are wonderful for transfer students. And of course, they're vitally important for all students, because that's what the graduation office uses for clearing people for graduation. So a transfer student's DARS can be run as soon as their credits are posted. So they will post those. Once that $150 deposit has been put on there, they'll usually post them as quickly as possible. This is one thing you want to be aware of. If students are applying in a timely manner, they will apply and all their degrees will get, their credits will get sent here before they're finished with their final semester. So most of the time when I'm looking at a new transfer student, there's one semester missing, almost always. So I always check with them, is this a complete transcript? Because they can be missing a whole semester because they weren't done when they applied. So consider that. Remember, a student has to have a green DARS. That's what we call it. That means a green check all the way down. And graduation will not try to figure it out. If there's an X, they'll just say you're not graduating. So if you're a departmental advisor, and we're general advisors, it's our job, and it's the student's job for sure. It's their responsibility. We want a green DARS. So that means transfer substitutions are really important, and you will spend a lot of time on it. It is a time-consuming thing, especially out-of-state students, international students. You have to spend a lot of time figuring out if a class can count. But it's a really important part of our job as advisors. Transfer students' DARS have a few variations from students who started as a freshman. So I'm going to show you some screenshots so you can see what a DARS will look like that's a little bit different. Hopefully you can see it. It's kind of far away. You can always see if a student is a transfer student because we pull out the total number of transfer students. It's marked there right at the beginning of their DARS report. You'll be able to see how many credits. If they have an associate's degree, you can see in that circle, it'll be posted right there at the top. So you kind of know what you're looking at. There are a lot of questions about transfer GPA, and there are a lot of rumors flowing around out there. A lot of students think their GPA just goes away when they come to a new school. The truth of the matter is we do not mix transfer GPA with University of Utah GPA, but that does not mean it's gone away. It's just the back page of the DARS, and we'll show you in a minute. And anybody that's evaluating GPA, like for getting into the social work program or something else, they're going to look at a lot of things. It doesn't go away. I guess you could think of it as sort of a way to start over. There's going to be a real distinction. You can say, that was the old me, this is the new me, look at my good University of Utah GPA, but it doesn't go away. But it is a mix, so there's some truth in that rumor. The other thing about a transfer DARS, if you've looked at them very much, there are some ways to tell transfer courses. A transfer DARS, I don't know if you can see it here. This is supposed to say English 1100. And what the DARS does, if it's an obvious transfer class, it will drop the first letter of the department code and put an X. So if you ever see XNLG, XATH, something like that, that's a transfer class. Not every transfer class gets labeled that way. Anytime anybody on this campus has looked at a transfer class and said, I'm going to articulate that and match that with this class, it stops putting an X in there. So an X is always a transfer class, but not every transfer class will have an X. USHE schools are labeled. You can see here. That's from SLCC. And this is a good example of someone who had an associate's degree. We just say cleared, completed with associate's degree. So you'll be able to tell that it's an associate's degree. Right there, it's clearing a whole bunch of requirements. This is the back page. So you see that circle, there's their transfer GPA. And we do mix all of their schools together. And so I just had a girl today who went to Dartmouth and failed all her classes. I forgot about that. And I went, you need to sit down and add all of those failed classes from Dartmouth with all of your solid community stuff because that's what the admissions office is going to do. So this is a combination of every school. We give them one transfer GPA. And that appears on the back page. If we have matched classes, they're in one category. That's not something that you're probably going to use too much, but that explains why they're in two different places. You can see general education codes if you're interested. There's diversity, there's writing, American institutions. So those are on the back page of the DARS too. So there's a lot of information on the DARS report. Concurrent enrollment is pulled out separately so you can tell if a student took the class while they were still in high school. So you can see right there, it's labeled in that circle, concurrent enrollment. Okay. Another document students could bring to you is something called a summary of transfer work. It's a transcript that shows everything the admissions office accepted from another school, and it looks like a transcript. Unlike the DARS report, which just lists things alphabetically, this will be fall semester of 1995. It'll show semester by semester, school by school. So a lot of times students will receive that in the mail with their acceptance letter and will bring it into their advisor. So you'll just work off of that like you were working off of a transcript if you want to. But I'll be honest with you, most of the time I just run a DARS. I want my students to get used to looking at DARS. I want them to see how everything plugged into DARS. It's a good way for me to tell what's going on. So I usually run a DARS anyway. And for that reason, the admissions office is seriously thinking about not sending out this document, but they do still do it. They create it and send it to students, and so if you see one, you should be aware that it's just a transcript of all the transfer work they have, and it's called a summary of transfer work. Okay, the other tool, you might not use this as much, but I'll tell you, everyone else, students and advisors across the state use these things. These are articulation guides which show transfer classes at every one of our UC schools and all of the privates, and that's not a very long list, BYU Idaho, Westminster College, LDS Business College. Have I left anybody out? I don't think so. All of those schools plus the UC schools have a guide, and that is where every single major at the University of Utah is looked at in every school across the state and the privates, and we see which classes will fill requirements for each of those majors. Every major has their own chart. And so a student who wants to major in social work can go to the Social Work Getting Ready Guide from SUU or from USU or from Salt Lake Community and see a class-by-class match. What can I take at Salt Lake Community that will transfer and meet a social work requirement? This is a good thing because if you look at some places that have guides, they will have every class, and they'll match every class, every tennis class, every this class, every that class. And a student goes in and they can't tell what they need to take from what they could take. So you cannot get a degree in social work by taking a bunch of tennis classes or something like that. So something that doesn't show you the courses that are essential for your major and match them at your school is not very helpful, and it's very confusing. There is a Board of Regents guide that's like that, and I never send students to it, but I send them to the Getting Ready guides all the time. They are on the admissions website, and if you are working in a department, you want to look at your guides all the time, every single school, and make sure it says exactly what you need it to say and want it to say, because students go on these all the time. They plan everything they do for 2 years based on these guides. Salt Lake Community College prints them and hands them out to students by the dozen. So your guides should look the way you want them to look. Right now is the time of year when they're updated. It's the admissions office that does it. They will send those guides out to your department chair and ask them to review them. And sometimes they don't know what it is and they don't worry about it. And we've had guides with lots of misinformation, and they have to honor whatever is in those guides. And sometimes it's not helpful to the students at all to have that honored. You know, they needed a prereq and they didn't take it, and you know they're stuck because they don't have the right background, but they got accepted to a program. It's really a mess. So your guide should look right. So try to keep them up to date if you can. As advisors, you kind of know how students are using them and what's on there, maybe better than your department chair. So take a look. If you haven't looked at them, it's good to get familiar with them. The admissions office prints hard copies and will give them to you. So you'll get a little guide that shows all the schools and everything in there, and that's for your use, but students find them online mostly. Okay, if you have any questions, you are welcome to contact me. If I'm not around, you can always call our quick answer desk. So that's just the person upstairs. They're at the ready to answer questions, and transfer questions can usually be answered by the quick answer person too. So any questions about any of that? That's a lot of transfer information. Okay, there are lots of exceptions, and transfer students are definitely a little complicated because you know, they're coming from everywhere with all kinds of different things. So this was just sort of a really quick snapshot, and you will have complicated, crazy things where you'll work with admissions, transfer center, you know, and we'll call you too. So we kind of consider you all part of the transfer team. Okay, thank you.